All right, everybody, welcome to Dark Crimes. I am your man, Prince Solomon, along here with
Sincere Ignorance.
Absolutely, and we have a wonderful guest. We have a wonderful brother, talented, extremely gifted with what he's coming up with here as well, Eric Basir. And we're going to discuss his graphic novel based on
Badin. It's based actually on a slave that was brought to Sweden, but actually became a part of the royal court.
Absolutely. First and foremost, Mr. Basir, we do appreciate you for being a part of the Thought Crimes family. Eric, thank you for taking out your time, man. And it's just good to have you on. And please introduce yourself to the people here and let them know about your property from the start here.
Man, well, first of all, with that introduction, I am very grateful, of course, to wake up in the morning and to be with you all and just to have such a hip happening internet sensation interview me. I mean, it's you all are a trip. I've checked out your shows and it's a lot of fun to listen to you. So okay. I'm glad to be a part of it, and I hope to bring some happiness and some tears as well. but more happiness than tears. But yeah, I have been doing this graphic novel project, and I call it a project for a reason, but I've been working on this. This will be the 4th year, and I happened to hear about Badin, as you described him, from a friend when I was about to go on a trip to Sweden. And for those who aren't too familiar, because sometimes people mix up Sweden with Switzerland, it's a Scandinavian country in far northern Europe. It's in between Norway, Denmark, and Finland. And it is known throughout history as being a neutral power. But that's a kind of another topic we could get into. But this place is the land of my mother's ancestors. My father is a black man of the United States, descendant of Africans who were enslaved. And we've traced that history back to the 1700s to Edenton, North Carolina. My mother's side, this opportunity allowed me to reconnect her side of the family with their lost relatives in Sweden. My mother is second generation of immigrants that left Sweden for the United States, and they lost complete contact. So this TV show in Sweden called Allt för Sverige had a big call for Americans of Swedish ancestry. So, my wife pushed me along to try it. My mom was like, yeah, you try it, and yeah, I went back and forth with it and didn't work out. But then the show actually kept trying to come back to me because I think they were very interested in me because frankly, being, a black man with Swedish ancestry and a Muslim, they were really, they really wanted to get me over there to this show. And on the BadinSecret.com website, I have a section about me, and you can actually find a link to watch the show. I was on about 3 episodes.
Very important. I didn't have to think about these values that he mentioned, and that's exactly the same values I share, especially as a Muslim. I try not to be too loud. I try not to offend. I try to speak truthful, but be kind about it and seek consensus. That's such an important part of how I feel and the religion that I've accepted. Just move on up. I live in a suburb of Chicago with my wife and 2 children. I am self-employed as a photo retoucher and an illustrator.
Allahu Akbar.
The day always begins with prayer. From Sweden, Anna Greta Persdotter and Johannes Larsson, Johan Peter Munson. We always ask for blessings on our ancestors. We are very thoughtful of those who came before us. Growing up with a Swedish mother, a white American, and a African American father, it was very difficult. My mother pretty much raised me. My parents did divorce when I was young.
I really, probably didn't spend much time telling you about your Swedish heritage. And
I can't blame you. You didn't know. No one really told you a whole lot. My mother is really, really, really happy. She's very excited. This great Swedish adventure is very symbolic. Because here I am, a child of Africa and Sweden. Dear Eric, your great-great-great-great-grandfather was Anders Mattsson Wahlberg Wall, a soldier who lived in the parish Visnum with his wife and children in the early 1800s. The military life was rough, and soldiers like Anders did not receive the kind of recognition they usually deserved. He died of consumption at 48 years of age, leaving behind a wife and children who were hardly equipped to handle their miserable and unsanitary environment without him. 2 of the Anders children died early, painful deaths as a result of unsanitary conditions. His daughter, Anna Charlotta, died of typhoidal chest infection just 1 month shy of her 3rd birthday. Oh, oh man. One of the Anders' surviving children was Anders Andersson. Without his dad, things only got worse. Anders approached adulthood as a member of the lowest possible class of the people in the villages. They were called back hut dwellers. We have this history on my grandfather's side, the struggle and the sickness, the caste system. Boy, I got it good. They really... Anders had no land to farm at all, so he was reduced to doing day jobs for a local landowner. In return, Anders got permission to build a ramshackle hut for his wife and 8 children, along with a small patch of ground, usually hard, where he could try to grow some potatoes. Moving up that tenancy ladder was a steep climb, but ultimately he prevailed. By the time he died, he had risen from being a back hut dweller to the level of tenant farmer, or torpare. Anders Andersson's son was also named Anders Andersson. The younger Anders Andersson had a son himself, to whom he gave what he believed to be a more distinctive name, Carl Gustaf. This child would live to see the rate of social change unthinkable to his grandfather and great-grandfather. Carl Gustaf took full advantage of his newfound freedom by moving to America. Carl Gustaf was one of many Swedes to come to the New World. In America, Carl Gustaf met and married Sigrid Bengtsson. They had a son, Frank Gideon Andersson. He was your mother's father, or your morfar. Oh, wow. Frank Andersson, we got him. This is just a huge amount of information that we really needed to find out about. And we have so many family members that are going to benefit from this, besides myself and my children. I do feel happy. I feel honored. I feel like Sweden has made me its own.
Okay.
Yeah, it's lots of fun, but it was a very negative experience. extremely negative. I didn't go there negatively. I went there very enthusiastic. But of course, as soon as I get off the plane and I meet the other Americans who I am on the show with, there's 9 others. One of them, I will not name her. She refused to shake my hand during introductions and said, "You don't look like us. You don't belong with this group." And now, I've heard that before. You've heard that before. You know what that's about. And I said, "Yeah, I'm just here to shine the shoes." And they looked really uncomfortable with that one. And I just nodded my head. I'm like, oh my God, I came, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of billions of miles from the wilderness of North America to Northern Europe. And I got to basically be told my face, "You an N-word." You know what I mean? And it's like, why? Why do I need to do that? So immediately, my whole experience just getting off the airplane was soured. And it went on. I could go on with other little things. Just one more. Once some other castmates found out I was a Muslim. Now, believe me, I don't go around telling people I'm a Muslim. Yep. Yep. I just don't tell people what my religion is and whatever. That's my business. But he happened to see, I guess, my prayer rug kind of sticking out of my backpack. He's like, "Oh, what's that? Your napkin?"
Wow.
So I said, "Nah, man, it's my prayer rug." He said, "Oh, you a Muslim?" I was like, "Yep." He says, "So you pray to Muhammad?" And I was like, "Nope." And so you know how the story goes.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're familiar with. Sometimes white folks who are ignorant can be inquisitive. Yes. And it's annoying.
Oh yeah, too many questions. Yeah,
because you know what it's about.
Yeah.
It's not about education. It's not about opening the mind. It's about I'm gonna put you in your place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
About condemning and ridiculing.
So, yeah. And then in Sweden I met Swedes who aren't white, and they would express to me their experiences. Now in Sweden, Norway, Finland, Denmark, Scandinavia, these countries, they call you the N-word at the drop of a hat. Mm-hmm. I mean, the N-word is like, whatever. That's what it is. That's what you are.
Yes.
And it's awful, because it's a demeaning word. Hate crimes don't exist over there. Wow. They can beat you down, call you N-word, go back to Africa, you jävla negra, and all that stuff. And you can press charges, but it's just assault. Here in America, you have a little more of a chance for justice.
Right.
Because you can, there's hate crimes, and this qualifies for that.
Right.
It doesn't exist out there. Yeah. That's like, no. We're all equal in these countries. We're not like Americans, they say. Well, yeah, but you still got to take statistics. No, we don't have to do that. Mm-hmm. That's racism. Mm-hmm. To take who's black, who's white, how many blacks are here, the blacks, blah, 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 blah. So they turn it around and say, well, that's racist, and we are anti-racist. That's a big thing in Scandinavia. That's a big thing in Sweden, in Norway, in Denmark. They say, well, we are anti-racist, and they look down on American white people, and American government say, you are a racist. But they say they're anti-racist. But their anti-racism refusal to acknowledge that there's injustice, refusal to acknowledge that there's no black people working as judges, there's no black people working in the cities, is racism. But they say it's not. You see how confused it is. You're like, okay, Eric, wrap this up. So it's hard to wrap it up because it is so deep.
Yeah.
And as black people in the United States, we think, just rightfully so, that we are exceptional. Mm-hmm. Yet that exceptional attitude can cut us off from our brothers and sisters in the diaspora. You see, because what they go through is different from what we go through, and what we go through is different from them. But it's still the same poison. It's just a different type. So instead of the poison that, let's say, paralyzes you, oh, let me drink this. They have a poison that will blind you, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So we're paralyzed in America. They're blinded in Europe. We can't do anything. You know what I'm saying? We can't progress because it's still poison, you see. But it's different. You can't take, well, I'm black in America, I'm going to go to Europe, I'm going to tell them brothers and sisters what to do. No. It's different.
I'm glad
like for example, in Sweden, you'll have black people from all over the diaspora there. You'll find some from the Republic of Congo. You'll have some from Namibia. You'll have some from South Africa. You'll have some from Ghana, from Nigeria, from Cameroon, from Kenya, Somalia, Egypt, Morocco, right? I mean, they'll be in one town and there'll be all of them. Here, it's like, well, it's just us. Yeah. So that's a lot of different culture. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. 100% here. And
no, I was going to say, I really like how you brought up the point of the disconnect with some or many Black Americans with the plight of Black people globally, because sometimes we tend to just focus on our own problems within the United States, but we forget about the Ethiopian, Jews in Israel that are suffering. We forget about the hate crimes in Russia, where their thought process is a bit more expansive because they think anyone who isn't white is a nigger there. And then over in like the European countries you stated, like in Sweden. So it's something that we don't really think about, the global plight of Black people, of people of African descent, and it's something that we really need to articulate better, because if people understand that this is a global issue, they will be able to recognize, for example, in the United States, it's not about the behavior of Black people. It's not about the culture of Black Americans in the United States. This is a global system. Like you said, Black people in the United States don't understand that they're given a poison where they're not blind. It's still a bad type of poison, but they could still be president. They could still be a judge. They could be a police officer. They can make a lot of money, and if they want to, put that into institutions to help other Black people. They don't understand, like, again, Israel, for Ethiopian Jews, they can't do that. Over in Sweden, they can't even do that. So we got to understand those issues.
Well, Eric, also, one thing that, upon reading about your background, you faced a lot of bigotry, and you also, as you were there, you was absorbing a lot of the negative stereotypical imagery that was found, not in the media, including cartoons, right? And what you did, it looks like here with Badin's history, because it seems like to some degree you guys had overlapping historical elements in your background, and you was able to draw to him as a historical figure, because one thing that I found out is that how the perception, for some reason, it hasn't changed. They're thought of, at least even with Badin, he was reduced to being like a gesture, even a sexual deviant. Mm-hmm. And you, for the most part, you stated, look, man, I'm going to put this information out there and I'm going to put it in a unique fashion as well. Could you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah. And you said it. That's exactly it. Badin's spirit, I got to tell you, it may sound strange, but I feel that I am absolutely obsessed with this man, and his spirit is in me. I can't explain it precisely as, scientific, but that's exactly, as you said, this man, I connected with him because when I was there in Sweden, and you talked about that cartoon that I've talked about, and I show it in my lecture, which is also on my YouTube channel, where I talk about my experience. And if you can imagine, okay, I'm in Sweden, right? You're in Sweden with me, let's say, and we're sitting at the hotel, a Best Western, big hotel. We open up a weekly newspaper. Now in Sweden, they read a lot. Got lots of newspapers, and these aren't just little. This was a whole regional newspaper. You open up the newspaper and you see a cartoon. of a white janitor, a woman, with a broomstick in the rear end of a black baby, a tar baby, you know, with the bone and like black, mopping the floor with it. And the cartoon headline is lower class people. You know, you see that in a regular mainstream newspaper. It's shocking. You know, like for us, we see that like either on the internet or in the museums. We really don't see that stuff in our weekly and daily newspapers. I never have in the United States. So this is part of the culture. And when you bring it up, they say, oh, come on, you're being too sensitive.
Right.
They do it with Asians too. You know, the Asians, you know, Sweden is the #1 country in Europe that adopts children of foreign backgrounds. So they adopt children from Latin America, from Africa, from Asia. And these children grow up there with Swedish names and speaking Swedish. Some of them, that's all they know. Yet the imagery that they get bombarded with is they are savages, they are half humans.
Do they adopt those kids for slave labor? Is that why, so that this is indoctrination? Or they really, I guess, perceive these kids that they adopt as their actual kids, and you know, this is indoctrination by ignorance? Can you go a little bit deeper for that?
Yeah, good question. And I hope I'm not going too far off. If I am, y'all just like steer me back.
No, you're
fine. I don't want to be disruptive to what you want to accomplish.
No, you're fine. Like Prince had to mute my mic because I was laughing, not because of the fact that it was funny, but just how bizarre people would actually have to be to have an image of some tar baby and then mopping the floor. That shit just don't make no fucking sense.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's exactly it. Exactly it.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, what are you worried about? But so okay, I lost my train of thought though. Go ahead. Question again, one more time. Sorry.
Those children that were being adopted, is this something?
Yeah. Okay, so here's where we get into white supremacy. Okay, here's where we get into culture.
Right.
How different it is in Europe. All right. No, the children are not brought there for inhuman activity, you know, slavery or being sex slaves or anything like that. They raise them, they adopt them and raise them as their own. It was just like Badin's adopted mother, the queen, Lovisa Ulrika. She did not make him a slave. You know, in the 1700s, yes, things were different, and there was still a fear of Moors. You got to remember the time of the Moors was just like freshly over, where they knew that blacks were not going to be a threat to them anymore in Europe. But it was still a reality, though, because Muslims were around there. You still had a caliphate, right, of brown, dark-skinned people or people with turbans that were not Christians but had power, you know. So there was that tension, but like Lovisa Ulrika is like, well, this is interesting. This is different. I have a child from India. I have a child from Africa with me. You see, it was more like they would keep them in the courts. They would show them off. They would give them work to do that would attract attention to the public, and therefore the public would be interested in what the royalty had to say. You see, it's very different. So nowadays there's still a strain of that, but sincerely, a lot of these white Swedes, they just want to have some children, and they have some children that are different, and they in Sweden there's this I want to help. I don't know what you call that. I forgot the phrase. I want to help the poor people. You know, I want to help the poor people, and it's kind of like a patronizing thing. You know, it's kind of like, well, Jesus, you know, why do you want to help? Why don't you just stop making weapons and selling them to my government that kills my people? You know what I mean? Because Sweden is one of the biggest arms manufacturers in the world.
Yeah, people don't know that. Yeah, that's one thing I know about Sweden. Yeah.
Yeah, they'll make a rocket that they'll shoot you from the other side of a mountain and just blow up your house. You know, I mean, they got high tech stuff.
Wow.
But they're neutral.
Yeah.
So they sell to everybody.
Yeah.
You know, and so, but anyways, you know, I'm digressing. So the coach, it's very difficult for them to handle the issues of race because they do feel like they're helping. And there is an attitude of, well, at least you're not living in the jungle, or at least you're not living in the desert.
Right.
You're in a better environment. Well, yeah, but
right, and it's not all as productive as it makes out to be. It's kind of, remember, I don't know if you recall, Eric, but it's kind of similar to what took place in Hurricane Katrina, right? Here you had Barbara Bush, and she got on TV and she says, well, at least it's better than what y'all were living like in New Orleans.
You mean
right?
a house?
Yeah. You know,
yeah.
So it's kind of that attitude as well that they've taken on, and they feel, as you said, in a self-patronizing manner, that they're doing something to greater good, and it's not. And also, I'm glad you brought up the point that Sweden is one of the many kingdoms where the gods of war actually roam. People don't know that.
They've taken a lot of resources out of the continent of Africa as well.
Yeah.
You know, so they're also guilty of that.
Yeah, and I love what you're bringing this information, Eric. And I like the fact that you're tying it in as you're giving this historical lesson with the background of the Moors. And also, Eric, could you touch on to the fact of the indigenous people and the massacres that had taken place in the 500-year history of Sweden as well? Because I know that's tied in, infused in what you're saying here as you continue along.
Yeah. And you know, you know, I really want you and your audience to understand that I'm going to tell you, it's a great country.
Mm-hmm.
It is. And it is better than the United States.
Wow.
Because they take care of their citizens. You have a right to a university education if that is what you want. Maybe you don't want that. Maybe you just want to go to trade school. Well, then you get that. You have a right that when you're sick or you got a lump in your chest or your throat to see a doctor and not go broke. You have a right to that. And it doesn't matter. Yeah, okay, there's some problems like everywhere, but it is not like here where you and I are wondering, I've got this growth on me, or I've got a cough, or I have a problem. I'm bleeding somewhere I shouldn't be bleeding.
Mm-hmm.
Do I go to the doctor because I can't afford it? My tooth is hurting. You know, it doesn't really exist out there. They're like, okay, go to the doctor. You won't go broke. You'll pay mostly $200 a year out of pocket for seeing doctors and specialists. That's it. You know, so it's a different society, and like I said, it's different in many regards and better than where we live.
You know, some people like to.
But let me just jump real quick to answer him about the indigenous real quick, and then please don't forget your question or what you're going to say. Please don't. The Sweden is the #1 provider. Yes. Yes, it is the #1 provider of iron ore in Europe. They make the equivalent of the Eiffel Tower like over and over every year or every other month or something like. It's just something outrageous, the amount of ore they extract from the ground. They do this through mining. And by mining, they have to dig into the ground in the north. And there's reindeer herds out there, and the Sami people, the indigenous people, have to continuously manage and try to move, and they can't keep up with what they're doing. And it's always been that way. There's always been mining, and it just goes on and on and on. And the Sami people have continuously been pushed north from the early days of Sweden. Before it was a kingdom, and when it became a kingdom, and during. And there's I have records from a scholar named, a historian named Peter Erickson, and he supplied me all the information I need to prove that even the early kings would they would move the indigenous people out of the land. Somehow they disappeared. They never really say how they disappeared, but they would get them out of there. They would hunt them. They would hunt their animals. They would, convert them to Christianity. It changed their names, make them pay taxes. They had to pay taxes. It sounds familiar, doesn't it? It sounds familiar. It sounds like the Native Americans, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So it's always this thing. They're always pushing and pushing and pushing on the indigenous people. But go ahead, sister. Please say your thing.
Oh no, great commentary. I just wanted to go back to what you was talking about with healthcare. What do you say to people who say, well, it's impossible in the United States because of the population difference between Sweden and the United States?
Well, yeah, I guess so. If you're going to keep, yeah, it is. If you're not going to tax people, you have to tax people, especially the people with money. You know what I'm saying? I mean, do you really need another boat? Do you need another house? Mr. President or governor or whoever you are. Do you really need it? No, you don't. So pay more taxes. I mean, they pay a lot of taxes out there. Everybody pays taxes out there, but yeah.
Wow.
No, we can't. We absolutely cannot do it. And I believe that this is part of a genocidal plan in the United States. That's why they're doing that. Because they know, because we are, here this is another subject, not related, I'll just say it briefly, but you do politics on your show, so this will fit just fine. We are in food deserts, our people.
Yes.
And we live off of soda pop and potato chips. So we're full of heart disease and cancer, but we can't get health care. This is genocide. They are, it's not, this is eugenics. Excuse me. This is eugenics.
Yes, it is.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a form of eugenics because, people talk a lot of shit like, oh, well, just eat healthy. That's fair for upper middle class and maybe middle class, mid-range and up.
Brad Pitt, Johnny Depp.
Yeah, you can make definitely. It's all up to you. You got the money, but they know darn well the working poor. If they have to choose between something that's extremely healthy, but it's already like $20, $15, $10, they're gonna go for something that's $4 and $3 to provide for their family.
Absolutely.
So it's really a bogus, statement there.
What happens here, and Eric, you brought up an excellent point. It is eugenics. The country was founded off of it anyway, right?
Yeah.
But it is eugenics. And what they've been able to do, because people forget where Hitler actually learned a lot of his stuff from, or at least their form of Aryanism, Pan-Aryanism, right? But they're not as overt as, let's put, millions of Jews in, the oven, or what we saw with the Bolshevik Revolution as well. What they're doing here now in America, it's a slow cooking process. It's like they're turning up the degrees and the frog doesn't know it's being cooked right now. So as you brought up, you said, and Sin as well, you both brought up great points. It's like, I'm just going to get this bag of chips. I'm going to get me some cancerous, carcinogenic hot dogs. Let me get some of this bread with all this, white bleached flour in it that my allergens keeps acting up every time I eat it. Man, I know about all that, but I can't afford anything else because that's how they've designed this system where you're forced into that. And so what happens, instead of it being a hot eugenics war, what it is, it's cold and it's soft. And then as one guy brought up, I'm not going to name him on the show, but one thing that he stated to me, he said soon there's going to be, this is when I was really younger, but he says it's going to be a point in time where you're going to look down the block and 4 out of 7 people are going to be stricken with cancer. And if you think about it, when cancer first hit the scene, when they hit the scene, like doctors would gather around that baby because cancer to them, it was something different. It wasn't common out.
What's this?
Now it's like, people having cancer is like the common cold now.
Yes, it's the flu. And also, I want to bring up, Prince and I eat organic and healthy 99% of the time. At the end of the shopping, it's like $200, $300. You get for 30 objects, or 20 objects.
Yeah.
So I understand exactly when it comes to the working poor. These are not lazy people. These are people working, and they still don't have enough money to buy organic. And then the next thing people say, well, grow your own. Very well, that's true. But then again, what happens? You have politicians in the government that make it hard for people, laws and policies, and make it hard for them to do urban farming.
We got you for a weed farm.
We got you for a weed farm. You get in trouble, you get arrested. I know in California one time, certain parts they're supposed to be easing up on that, but they threw away all the food, organic milk, everything.
Oh, they would give people for goat milk.
It was like crazy shit.
Yeah, and
also, in Chicago, we had a big scandal on the south side. On the south side in the black neighborhoods, because in Chicago we have black neighborhoods, we have Latino neighborhoods, we got white neighborhoods. It's very segregated here in Chicago, and they were giving tickets to black men on bicycles, damn bicycles. They're not polluting. Maybe they don't have a helmet. Maybe they're riding down the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just like, I love it to see a black man riding a bike, because I'm like, yeah, he's exercising and he's keeping the carbon out of the atmosphere.
Yeah, I like that.
And then we do the right thing, and they still give you a ticket.
Because that's a part of it. That's a part of the eugenics war, and and people don't understand that. And to tie into that point, what you brought up, I told Sid this story all the time, and when I tell people, they're like, "Man, I can't believe it. It's so goofy." I had what they call as a lowrider bike. All right, it was a nice lowrider bike. It looked different if some people weren't familiar with the culture, but I had one in San Antonio. I was coming home from work. Mind you, my job at the time was about 20 miles away from my house. So I didn't have the money for the ride, and I didn't, by the time, because they put all the black folks on the night shift, by the time they let me off work, none of the buses were running. So what I would do, so what I do, I would just hightail it on down there and hope to everything in the universe that had power that cops left me alone, because San Antonio has a notorious history as well. Well, sure enough, I got pulled over, and they called 4 other squad cars. So you had 2 officers per car, and they're all surrounded, around me like they had this big drug bust. But routinely, all the time, and I had noticed it while I was in San Antonio, they didn't harass the Hispanic males. They didn't harass the white women that were riding their bikes. But all the brothers were always getting pulled over. They hit a brother with one of their squad cars and said his bike struck the car. So yeah, so this is something that
around the country.
Yeah, it happens around the country, and also going to what you was talking about across the ocean with in Sweden as well. And as prominent as Biden was historically, why and how is it that he had became to some degree in some circles a laughing stock, dismissed, a gesture?
Yeah.
How did that happen?
So Biden, again, we're trying to think about this man of 200 years ago in Sweden. How can we relate, right? And here is a man that first of all, when he died, his widow had all of his estates, okay? And she, obviously sold most of it off. And one man with the name of Crusenthal bought almost all of his library. It's a lot of books, including diaries. And he wrote a 6-volume history of the Swedish monarchy during Badin's time, based on Badin's books and his diaries. And he used historical fiction And he named the whole title Morianen. He named the whole site Morianen, and Morianen is Swedish for the Moor. And he put Badin's portrait on the front page, the front of the book. And it's written in it's late 1800s Swedish. So I'm just like learning Swedish, and so it's very hard for me to read and understand. But it started then because he tries to portray Badin as dignified, but the culture, Swedish culture, could not allow it because he was black. So everyone else would take from that. They would take from this fictional fact and build new facts and fiction. So right after his death, we lose the primary sources. We only have one primary source. Primary source means something that the person that we're learning about actually wrote or said. Okay. And we only have one left, and that's been translated. Okay. But right away, they start taking information from what other people said, and then we start getting the myths about him impregnating his adopted sister, Princess Sophia Albertina. A lie, a fabrication. But they take these things and they just start throwing it all together to try to show a history of him. They say, well, he was offered the job of being a surveyor, and he declines it. Well, why? Well, he owns multiple properties, but they say it was because he felt he was inferior. No, he's got enough to do. Why would a man who has land need the king to give him a job? You know, you got to think about these things. Why do they say what they say? And so they begin to break him down. And then they take his name, his nickname, Badin. Because keep in mind, Badin is a nickname. You know, his real name is Adolf Ludwig Gustav Fredrik Albert. Now, Adolf Ludwig Gustav Fredrik, these are all the names of the people in the royal house that he grew up with. So Adolf is the king. Ludwig is the masculine name of the queen. Gustav is anybody in Sweden who has that name knows that name is linked to some of the greatest kings in Sweden. And Fredrik Albert, that is also part of the royal house. You don't give those names to a slave. There's no slaves with all these names. In history, slaves don't get to join the Freemasons. They don't get to join Par Bracol. That's another secret society. They don't get to join secret societies that are reserved for the nobility. So they just start to break it down and break it down and break it down. And now you'll go online, you could find little documentaries that mention him, and maybe they'll talk about him, and they'll portray him as kind of like an animal, you know, crawling around as a pet of Crown Prince Gustav III, who he grew up with as a playmate. Yet Gustav III, the king of Sweden, writes about Badin and says he beat me at chess every time we played. Why would you play with a slave? Why would you play chess with a slave and then write about it, how he beat you? He says this doesn't make sense. Doesn't make any sense, right?
No, it doesn't.
Why?
That's incredible. Yeah. That is, and you know, one thing that, if anything, we've been able to see historically, there's a common theme there, is that they're hiding the truth pertaining to the history of the Blackamoors, the Moorish people, Black people in general, and other variations language-wise of what it means to be described as Black. And I always find it fascinating. Honestly, I've seen Badin's name show up times where I've randomly, was looking up for other issues when I was, piecing together little documentaries or video edits and things like that, but I never had the chance to delve into his history. I saw the brother's picture one time because I remember seeing when she was pulling it up.
I was pulling up Pushkin's grandfather, and when you pull up his grandfather, then they sometimes show people who were considered Moors historically in other European countries. So, his, like you said, his name was brought up, but I never thought to check on.
No, because you'll see him and he'll show up, and you're like, oh, that looks like a Regal brother. And then when you keep scrolling, right? But it's just. Eric, I'm just going to say it, man. We thank the universe and whatever people want to call it, God, I don't care what it is, the source, right? But we thank that for people like you. You know what I'm saying? Because I do believe in the spiritual realm. We both believe in the metaphysical realm as well. I do believe at certain points in time, certain energies that have resonated on this earth, their story needs to get told, and people are used as conduits, and people they're becoming the whispers for these individuals. They decipher certain codes for these individuals. The fact that you took your time and you sat down and to illustrate panels, people don't even know, because I do comic strips and things like that. I know what it means to sit down and do every panel frame by frame by frame, the wording and the meticulous color scheming. Sin is an artist. She does the same thing as well. So for you to be moved in that manner, right? And you're transcripting that information from a source code somewhere upon you based on with your research as well. And you're not doing it just to draw Batman and Superman. You're doing this for something else. To me, that means there's definitely some sort of force moving on you, brother.
Well, also the truth always comes to light. Before when I was a kid, I was like, yeah, BS. But the older I get, it doesn't matter how deep is people try to dig it in there. It always come out as like, Columbus, when you was a kid, fucking lies. Oh, he discovered America, all this, all that. Then it come to find out he never even landed to the United States or the Americas. He only stayed in the Caribbean, and he never did anything great but kill people. But in school they wanted you to believe a great man wasn't great, and in Sweden, pertaining to Beden, they want you to believe a great man wasn't great. So it's all mental games. That's
a beautiful thing, and that's why, again, I just want to say we do value what you're putting into this, man. And I mean, the fact of what you stated, his level of greatness, that type of stuff, it just makes me laugh because, the old adage is that eventually the truth will come forward. And it's based on whether we want to accept it or not. We have nothing to do with that. Once it's channeled through an energy source such as yourself or other people as well, it's out there, and the fact that they have tried to meticulously break off this man's legacy, and here you are, you're like, well, let me piece this together and show the next generation, show some people within my area, look, this is what we are, and this is where we come from.
And, man, I want to just say, I'm greatly humbled, and I still to this day I still have to look at my work, and I still look at I did this because it really doesn't feel like I did it. When I look at it, it's not that it's great and it's awesome, but it's just like, oh my God, this. How do you do this? This is crazy. Are you like do you sleep? I just sometimes wonder, but I do have to say that I have this spirit in me that I do want reconciliation. I want people who are at odds with each other to cooperate for the better good of humanity. I want white folk, and I am of this too. My mother is a white person. A white Swedish woman, or both her parents. Children of Swedish immigrants. I'm so connected with that land, just as I am Africa. I want white people to listen to us, respect us, and respect the indigenous people of Sweden and everywhere that they go and they have settled. Wherever white people have settled, there's someone else there. I want them Now, some people may say it'll never happen. It's fine. It's fine. You might be right. But I am compelled to try because I am of both worlds. I am of this new world, this European new world, and I'm of the ancient Africa, which is the source of all humanity, right? So the indigenous people and their traditions are our link between the past and the future. And I tie all this into the graphic novel. I take the impossible, I make it look possible. I try to redeem all parties. And I know if white people can't respect, a lot of white people can't respect us. Their hatred for us is so deep, and it's rooted in ancient history. And that'd be another topic for another day. But some of them will never be able to. They just have to slaughter us. We don't go around wanting to slaughter them, right? We don't, like Black Lives Matter, for example, right? We're like, Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter, right? We just want respect. That's what Black Lives Matter says, right? Well, then you got White Lives Matter, right? But White Lives Matter says, they say White Lives Matter, kill the blacks. So we're like, we just want to live, but they just want to kill. So we understand we're not going to get very far with a lot of people, but I feel compelled to try. I feel compelled to try because I prefer peace over bloodshed. I'm willing to fight for my rights. I believe in self-defense. I don't believe in carrying firearms because I got a bad temper. I'll start shooting people I love if I get pissed at them. You know, this is not a good idea for me to have a gun. But just kidding. But a lot of us are that way. Frankly, I don't think a lot of us need guns because, again, a lot of gun deaths are people shooting their own loved ones, and it's just dangerous. But that's just my opinion. I believe in hand to hand. But anyways, I'm saying all that because this book, this project, because actually I have a prequel to the book too. You know, I think I sent that to you all as well. It's so deep. I really want people to look at the indigenous people of Sweden in Badin as symbols of what we need to be like. And these are mythical symbols that I'm making. These are legends. What I write about Badin is legendary. It's mythical. It's historical fiction. Okay. And like I said, they've hidden the history, as you said, they've hidden it. So we got to make some stuff up. Okay. But let's make it up to where we can uplift people and try to save our people, our kin, and save our planet. You know, that's what I'm trying to get at. And I believe that Africa, the acknowledgement of Africa, you know, Christians say, from the Ten Commandments, and Jews, the Ten Commandments say, honor your father and your mother so that you can live long in the land you possess. If you honor Africa, you are honoring your mother and your father. Because no matter where you live, you know that someone came before you and they sacrificed. You know? I don't know how many hundreds of millions of years ago they left North Africa to go wherever they went. Right? You know? But they did it for us. And that came from Africa, our mother and our father. And when you're in Europe or you're in North America or Asia or wherever, and you see these ancient cultures, these indigenous people, man, don't mess with these people. Do not try to make them like you. Don't take their stuff. Don't try to change their anything, because they're your key to the future. Because what did they do? The Europeans came here to North America, and they would have all died off if it wasn't for the Native Americans. that survived. I mean, the Native Americans that didn't die from smallpox and all that garbage they brought over.
Yeah, right.
You know, they're like, oh, look here's an empty village of people that just left. No, they died about a year ago from some diseases, that you brought. So, but anyway,
yeah. That's a beautiful
thing. I
thing.
hope I didn't go off. I'm sorry.
No, that's an excellent point. Honor your mother and father, and the birthplace of humanity is Africa, and the most genetic diversity is in Africa. You destroy the land of Africa, you destroy the people of Africa, you destroy the human race.
Well, I'm glad you brought it back to the spiritual energy of all of this. Because whether we want to accept it or not, some of us have gotten into this new world, as you stated, and we've just abandoned just even the spiritual connotation of us and our soul, right? I feel it's karma, we're seeing taking place right now. As you stated, which is a beautiful saying, if you honor Africa, you honor your mother and father, right? The architects and the controllers and the think tanks of this society, they've went out of their way to disregard Africa and disregard Black people, right?
Yeah.
And in the long term, they've paid for it severely. Arguably, America is going to have one of the shortest rules in history. Even with all the fluff, with all of the Brad Pitt posters and everything, it's going to be one of the shortest rules in history when it comes to the kingdoms and things of that nature. So, what you have put forward, man, we have no problem. In fact, I personally would like to have you back on so we can discuss the history of the Moors and that time where around 1492, where a lot of things got kind of iffy, just even globally for Black people when they set out on their conquest into the world. And as you alluded to a little bit there, because you said, oh, that goes off into something else. Personally, down the line later on, we can set something up where I can have you back on, and I would like to talk into it because you seem very knowledgeable in the department as well.
And also, like how important it is, like you said, the past is also the future because it influenced the future. And what people, what people don't understand is, like, even when it comes to this new wave, when you see some people in the United States, this solar energy, green energy, that's an old way of thinking. That's something that used to be big, and especially in ancient time, if we're talking about the continent of Africa. And a lot of people don't know a lot of the smart things that they want to do is of the old world. And people forget in the old world, those kingdoms also lasted for a longer time.
Oh, long time.
Sometimes, because we're living in the now, the United States, Europe, we forget that the continent of Africa and Asia actually ruled far longer than Europe and the United States. And we forget all these things because we're about just the now, living in the moment, not respecting the past, not respecting the planet. And we don't know the damage that we're already doing to the continent of Africa, to the people of African descent. Well, everybody's of African descent, of course,
even right here now today.
But with these storms, it's just like it's just so crazy how we don't know. You don't respect the source of anything. When you constantly try to destroy that source, you're destroying yourself. It's kind of like even what's that movie with Bruce Willis where Looper, right?
Yeah, Looper.
Like, even though the situation was different, he had to kill his future self because he was trying to destroy a little boy. But in the context of the human species, especially when we're talking about white people, because they're the most guilty of this, they're looking at the African people or Black people globally. It's like, we're better than them. All this, trash.
Very dangerous thinking.
Yeah. They're trying to destroy it, but the more they try, the worse they make things for everybody.
Well, here's the thing about it. That's the difference in that mindset versus the original African mindset. Is the African way of life was about preserving life.
Yes.
Preserving life, right? in this Western New Age way of thinking, that's including the New World, also Manifest Destiny as well. That way of thinking was, I'm going to keep using until I almost run out. Then I want to preserve. And that's not how it's supposed to work, right? Maybe
No. You skipped a part.
Yeah.
You skipped a part. Keep using, move.
Yeah.
Keep using, move.
Yeah, that's the way.
Then I'll try to save what I've got.
Yeah, and that's what the thing. And that's the thing about it. Even if we're talking about it in this space, right now, what they're talking about is there room for us on Mars?
Depopulation.
No. Yeah, like you've burned every bridge on this planet,
brother. You are right now tempting me to spoil part of my book, but you know, the future is in the stars. You know?
Yes, it is.
But the mind that is present in the world is not mature.
No.
And this is what it leads to. And this is the heart of my book. And this is the secret of the Sami, as maybe you know. I don't know if you got to get too deep into the book yet, but it is about the far, 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 far future when our sun becomes a red giant. You know, because it's going to die. The sun is not going to live forever, you know, and when it starts ballooning, it's going to get really hot.
Yeah.
And we will have had to have left this solar system. In fact, we will probably have to leave before then because the Andromeda and the Milky Way are on a collision course with each other.
Yes, you're right about that. You're right about that. I read about that so many times. And I love what you stated about this idea of keep using, move, keep using. And that is something. Yeah, I mean, it's bad. It's terrible. And it's like now we're at a point where there's a sense of urgency to some degree with part of the populace, but it's still not enough. Yeah, it's still not enough to move everybody's butt. And the fact, as you brought up about going to the stars, right? Because they're already talking about everybody, even people that have been very filthy with just what's taking place now. Oh, I want to go to the stars too,
destroy that
right?
too.
But if you notice, I forget the guy's name. He was a physicist, and he said, you know, he has a problem with the fact that technology is advancing faster than the mentality of man. I mean, if you look at it, you know, we're getting all these new technological advances, which is junk technology that they periodically use because in certain regards is suppressed with the black budget, but that's another subject. But what happens, what happens is they slowly release it as junk technology. And a lot of people tend to think like, oh, I have an iPhone 12, we're so advanced, or my car drives by itself, we're so advanced. No matter how advanced the technology is, if you think about it, the mind is still the same. There has been no intellectual progress or spiritual growth, and even on a psychological matter as well. So that's just something that's interesting. I'm glad you touched on.
Well, it's due to the how we who we put as our leader and how we deal with people. You know, there's people who are mature about it. They usually end up dead. You know, and unfortunately, it's us not paying attention where we're somewhat complicit in those people ending up dead. You know, whether we're talking about a Martin Luther King, a Malcolm X, you know, various people who are honorable, who are white, black, whatever. We don't understand that. We're weeding those people out of our consciousness, which is why we're getting abundance of people who don't care. People who they're smart enough to know what we're supposed to do, but they're too compulsive to comply. Mankind have the intelligence to come up with technology to help us in the future, to make sure the majority of our human species survive. Whether you believe in God or evolution, we were given all the tools needed to survive. We're meant to. We can think of creating innovation 20, 50, 60 years down the line. We can do that. But yet, because of what we allowed to grow like a bad weed, you know, that's that killer mindset, that selfishness is going to destroy us all.
Well, Eric, also, and you are a historian. and I'm sure you've seen this as you read, right? And, just, me growing up and, reading about different civilizations and looking from the research we've done with you, ours, like, we're history buffs, but I mean, the way you went about it is in a whole nother level, right?
Yeah, it is kind of different.
Yeah, it's a whole nother level. But one thing I did find that was very curious, it was very interesting. At some point in time before the collapse, sociopaths and psychopaths always seem to rise to the top of society. Have you noticed that?
Well, yeah, because they are the negative agent, right? Mm-hmm. You need the push and the pull, right? The good and the evil, the yin and the yang, right? So if manifest evil darkens, or I hate that phrase, darkens, like dark is evil, like black people, but clouds are our judgment, makes us unable, it's like a fog, right? Well, then that will create more righteousness, right? Think about it, more righteousness. You have more wickedness than you have more righteousness. And I don't mean let's go to church, let's go to mosque, let's just pray, let's hold hands. No, I'm talking about righteousness. That is helping each other, loving each other, like you all do with me. You say, oh, here's a brother doing something positive. Let's join forces with him. Let's make him as famous as we can, right? You've done that. Jonathan Soul has done that. Other people have done that for me, right? I'm trying to do that back to you, and I'm trying to do that for other people. You see? That's the righteousness.
I like that. I like that a lot.
And another part of one of the morals of my story of Badin and the Secret of the Sami for us about that righteousness is we can become blinded by our own righteousness, our own sunlight. And here's the lesson. My story is to provide a new folk hero for non-white Swedes. That's one of the purposes of it. These are children growing up in Sweden. They have no real folk heroes. All their folk heroes are Pippi Longstocking, Emil, other Scandinavian white heroes. Okay, and that's fine. That's part of the culture, and that's good. We don't want to get rid of that. We don't want to delete that. We want to understand it and appreciate it. But I want to give a new folk hero. And this hero will also teach us, do not ignore the indigenous people. Because now you have 3 generations of black Swedes that have been in Sweden for a long time, of African ancestry. And they may not know it, but they are absorbing the colonial mindset. Do you understand?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, absolutely. They're taking in that self-hate that is created by the climate of that particular country because of the false history.
Well, not quite. I mean, that exists, but that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is as we come into power, we must not behave like those who came into power before us.
Absolutely.
Oh, you mean like with the crony capitalism, the over...
we can't ignore the indigenous people. Now you got a lot of, there's going to be some, I know in another generation or two, there's going to be more blacks, non-white people in Sweden in power and in Europe. Mm-hmm. There's already ministers of parliament who are not white in Europe, in European countries. Okay, we got an Asian, a South Asian mayor in London, right?
Yes.
So, yeah. So, I mean, this is a change. This is progress in many ways. But let's not forget the indigenous people of Europe. Let's not forget them, especially if you're in Sweden, especially if you're in Norway and Finland. As you come into consciousness of yourself, do not treat these people. Do not ignore these people like they were ignored before. Because a lot of Swedes in school, children, they don't know that Sami people lived in the southern half of Sweden. I don't necessarily mean all the way to Denmark, but they did. They existed, but they're not taught this in school. Can you imagine you and I going to school and they don't tell us? Okay, they don't tell you that about the Native Americans of Oklahoma and of Texas. And I'm not talking about the Oklahoma I'm not talking about Indian Territory, right? Oklahoma. I'm talking about before that.
Yes.
But they did. They kind of told us about this stuff, right? You know, a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But in Sweden, they don't do that. The children, they don't even know that Sami people lived in Stockholm and west of there. They don't know that. They think it was nothing. They think no one was there. That's not right.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I'm getting at?
No, Eric, man, and we appreciate it. And I
agree with that.
Yeah, I just enjoy that, you know, you have such profound knowledge of this information, and especially pertaining to Badin, the Sami people, even incorporating that into the Moorish Empire, and even reading, I always used to say, wow, that was a bad turning point for like black people collectively. But you know, but what I will say this,
but it was a long, brother. Come on,
yeah.
Do you know where some of the biggest hordes of Arabic of coins from the Caliphate were found?
Yeah, absolutely.
In Scandinavia, in Sweden.
Yes.
These were black people.
Mm-hmm.
They'll tell us that Arabs are like those guys over there in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
You know? No. They were blacks, and that's how the people in history wrote about them. They were black people, and they were tough. And they were disciplined. The Vikings. It's all been documented. Vikings worked under them.
Yeah. No, you bring up an excellent point, and that's why I said what I would like for you to do. I want to have you back on because those are. I mean, those are because those are things that we've brushed across, but because of sometimes how the pacing is, and if our focus isn't there, we don't get a chance to touch on these things. Right. Make no mistake. Our history is far more profound than Jackie Robinson. You know, our history goes a lot deeper than that, than Rosa Parks. No, and I'm just saying, because this type of stuff always gets excited about, because it's like, unless Sin and I, like, which we are planning to do at some point in time, unless we like immediately drop like a documentary touching on some of these things, like sometimes you're not able to articulate everything at once during the show. But if we have somebody such as a vessel with yourself, where boom, you can go into this culture or that culture pertaining to blackness, then the people that are listening on their way to work or coming home from school, they're like, oh wow, I did not know that.
People didn't even know how diverse Moors were. I know they had a different. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You real quick.
Yes.
Did I send you the prequel to the book?
No. I don't remember.
No, you haven't.
I don't remember it.
No.
Yeah. Okay, so I didn't. I think you would remember if you did, because it'd be two different documents. It's a completely different.
Okay.
So I did a prequel, and it starts. So Badin and the Secret of Sami actually starts 10,000 years ago, and then it jumps up into the 10th century, and that's where I deal with what we're just talking about.
Yes.
About the Arab conquest of Southern Europe, you see, and the reaching out, these people, you know, reaching out amongst the Europeans. So I did a little mini saga. One in the prequel, I feature a man from Baghdad named Ahmed ibn Fadlan, and it's based on real history. This man is based on real history. He never traveled to Scandinavia, but he traveled to where Russia is. So I have him do a little fictional diversion up north into Sweden. Mm-hmm. But anyways, I feature him, and he goes toe to toe with a Viking. You like it. He really schools them in the book.
I like that.
We definitely should get into that.
Oh no, we will. We absolutely will. No, because I enjoy that. I'm always fascinated with that, and I can't tell you, Eric, how many times I have been sat outside of my classrooms when I was little. I was like, oh, that don't make no sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I used to tell the teachers, well, how come every time we get to the people that look like me, we getting right at slavery? Now, well, don't be upset, Mr. Carter. It's just how it is. I'm like, nah, that's how you guys wrote
that,
it.
Or if they know it's BS, they'd be like, we know it's inaccurate and all over the place. Just write the answer. So
but that's the worst thing you can do to it. That's the worst thing. Like if the child knows it's BS, you know it's BS, but you telling them, oh, come on, come on. We know, we know. Yeah, we get it. Still have your self-esteem. Yeah. Like that's the worst thing. And I think, you know, this type of information you've kicked out there, even if you're talking about historical fiction, because arguably we could say all of the history in this country is historical fiction.
Most
because
of it,
yeah, because it's all made up. Matter of fact, they might as well put Indiana Jones' face as the 46th president of the United States, and years from now people will believe it.
It's amazing, you know. The author of Sleepy Hollow is the one who even started the false history of Columbus. You know, he only did it because he's like, I need the story to be better. Right now it's missing something, and then people took it as if it was
because they had no other outlook. If it was on paper, they believed it.
Yep,
they believed it.
It's the mythology.
Yes,
it's mythology. It's storytelling, and it's beautiful. Actually, you know, you think about the way that the Columbus story is told. It's actually quite interesting and inspirational. But God, you know, can we tell the truth also? Right? I mean, you go to the Capitol in Washington, D.C., right? And you look up in the dome, you know, and you see like heavenly pictures of the founding fathers, like floating around in heaven or something, like floating around in, you know, and they're godlike. They're godlike. And George Washington never told a lie, right? And, you know, Abe Lincoln freed the slaves. That's the best one.
Honest Abe.
Honest
Abe.
Yeah,
Honest Abe.
That's the best one.
Yeah.
Right? That's the best one, you know, but you know, we just have to because the people telling us, no, you really can't do historical fiction. No, you really can't tell your history like that. But they tell their history that way.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying, well, screw it. You know, there's nothing, I can't get anything from Badin except garbage about him being inferior, a jokester. I'm going to just turn it around. I mean, they say Badin, look it up in Wikipedia, they'll call him trickster. Well, okay. What if it meant clever?
Yeah.
Because, right?
Yep. The only one that shows him not to be a trickster and more so to what you're talking about is the blackpast.org.
Yeah. Like
exactly. The blackpast.org article. And that's Madabuko Diakité's article, I think.
Yep.
I think that's the one, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and his article is in my book too. It's in the appendix. And I'm going to go meet him next month when I go to Sweden. On my way to Stockholm, I'm going to go meet with him.
Wow.
I'm going to get to meet this brother. And this brother, you know, him and his wife had a child who became Sweden's most famous black rapper.
Really?
Yeah, his name is Timbuktu.
What?
Hey, that's a nice name.
Well, yeah, it's better than 50 Cent, you know, so
yeah.
I mean,
see, that shows you something. That shows you something, right? That shows you something. And every Swede, there's not one Swede that doesn't know who this man is.
Wow, that's incredible. Rapper. You know what's crazy about this though, Eric, is for whatever reason, I befriended a lot of Ethiopians growing up, just all the time, right? So what would happen? It was like, yeah, you know, Solomon, you know, I had a friend named McConan. And McConan was always happy. He says, guess where I'm going with Solomon? He said, where you going? I'm going to Sweden. I was like, oh, all right, we'll see you, homie. He was like, you should come too. And at the time, you know, I was, you know, just a brother working in the warehouse. I was like, this money looking good right now, so I'm gonna have to holler at you later, right? Yeah. But he was telling me that he had been so many times. He said that the experience for him was very beautiful, right? Then I had another African brother that was a doctor. He was an older guy, and he told me several times, Solomon, please, when you get the chance, you have to visit Sweden. And I kept saying,
Wow.
well, what is going on in Sweden?
Yeah,
you know?
I had a friend, Melanie. Well, she's not African, but she said she visited Sweden, and at the airport they have all this chocolate everywhere. She said, I don't know if it's true or not, but she said when she went, it was a lot of chocolate everywhere.
Yeah. So, but you telling, about the experience, I mean, I just kind of find it a little bit interesting because routinely a lot of people, especially from either Eritrea or Ethiopia, they were always telling me that at least, just to visit Sweden, just to check out the culture. And, at the time, like I said, I really didn't understand why. I wasn't really focused on traveling, but, just some of the information you've shared so far with us and our listeners, it's very interesting.
It's I'm so glad that you said it. See, it's no coincidence that you experienced what you experienced and I experienced what I experienced, and then we're talking about it, right? Mm-hmm. And this is the spirit. This is proof that the ancestors live in us. They are walking around on the earth in us, right? So, this country, Sweden and Norway, Finland and Denmark, it's another world, brother. It's another world. I mean, you will go there. The animals are different. The insects are different. The plants are different. You can drink the water. Like, you don't need a bottle. Like here in America, right? It's like, oh my God, what am I drinking, right? I'm like, how many pharmaceuticals did you consume today in your 8 ounces of water?
Right.
Right? But it's very clean, very pure. See, they have real strict regulations. We need to eat organic over here. Over there, they're like, what? You want to genetically modify this? Oh, well, you need to put a label on that. That's what they do over there. Here, it's kind of like, well, maybe we don't have to put a label. You don't know what the hell you're eating over here. So yeah, it's another world. The people are laid back. You have to have vacation. You have to have vacation. You have to take time off from work.
Wow. Well, yeah,
you
absolutely.
have to. It's the law. And you have to take like 5 weeks. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's really outrageous. It's unbelievable.
Well, you know what also I noticed when it comes to certain immigrants, like Ethiopians, for example, what Prince stated, I was reading their history in the United States, and I read that it was really hard for them in the United States because they couldn't get used to the fast-paced culture.
Oh, yeah.
They like to relax, take their time, even making their coffee. It's traditional, and it takes a while. It's not no rush. Just have relaxed conversation. But they said in America, go, 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 go. So, some of them, committed suicide or just went back to their home country or went to, some European country because they just couldn't handle the everything is go, go, go. Like, you're not really even enjoying life.
Well, a lot of them, and a lot of them that I know that if they, well, actually, most of them now, when they hit me up on Facebook, they're either back in their home country, they're in Sweden, they're in another country, but they left. And even the few Swedish people I did run into, there was a different temperament, which I found interesting, all in general. But Eric, could you let the people know how can they get a hold of your material? And if they need to, how can they get in contact with you as well?
Man, thank you. So the website, BadinSecret.com, BadinSecret.com, and that's where you can buy the book. You can learn more about the book. You can read the Twitter diaries of some of the characters. You can get the mini saga. I call it mini sagas, but it's really the prequel. And you can contact me as well. And I also have on there some podcasts that I've done where I interview Swedes of different backgrounds. And so if you want to listen to what life is like for Swedes of different backgrounds whose parents were immigrants to Sweden, check it out. It's all in English, and you'll learn a lot. It'll really open your eyes, and it's free.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. We're going to check more of that out as well. Sincere and I.
Yeah, showcase it on our site as well.
Absolutely, brother. Again, we appreciate the this time and this opportunity for you to chop it up with us and put us up on a lot of knowledge and information pertaining to Badin, the Sami people, what took place with the Swedish culture, what took place historically pertaining to Black people as well, Black nobility. And also, again, as I stated, we're going to have you to boomerang back around to get more into that. But again, ladies and gentlemen, the wonderful Eric Basir, articulate brother, great illustrator, fantastic photographer, photo retoucher as well, photograph retoucher as well. So again, people, get out there. If you get a chance, purchase his book first and foremost, but also visit his site, follow him on Twitter, like his Facebook page. Hey man, just reach out to him. Go have a burger with him.
Absolutely. Because of him, Badin is not just a painting you see on Google when you're looking up Black historical figures.
This proved Napoleon was Black. Brother, that's not.
Can I add one thing I forgot to mention?
Yes, sir. Yeah, absolutely.
And that is his only known diary is translated into English from Swedish and French, and it's free on the internet as a PDF. So you can also get that at my website too. So make sure you get it. It's a very deep book, a lot of symbology in there. So don't expect, an easy read, but check it out.
Okay, absolutely. As they say, that's a lot of understandings. Yeah, man. Yeah, that's great. Again, we're gonna make sure we keep in contact with you because I personally have some questions as well. But brother, we appreciate you coming
Absolutely.
here on Thought Crimes. Please, you all get out there and support this brother. Go to his website, check out his information. The great Eric Basir.
This is your girl Sincere.
This is your man Prince Solomon.
Peace.
Peace.